to the August 8th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting. We are broadcasting this meeting live on the Pacific Coast TV's website and along with a local Channel 7 station. We have a few brief public comment etiquette. We do have in-person folks that would like to speak, as well as we have people in our Zoom, which I'm going to switch right now. Okay. The Planning Commission Chair will open up the general public comment section of the agenda at the time. Community members are welcome to speak on any items that are not listed on this evening's agenda. For the specific items that are listed on the agenda, there will be a public comment opportunity and discussion during those items. 3 minutes will be given to those who comment. We will begin the in-person comments first, followed by the attendees on Zoom. Those wanting to speak in person, I'll recognize you by the green cards that we have here, and then the virtual raising of the hand online in that order. Please make sure that when you start, please speak clearly and state your name for the record. If you're online, please push *6 to raise and unraise your hand and *9 to mute and unmute. I think if you can we just remind our staff and commission to speak into the microphones, because it is recording and going into our television and so forth. I think that is it for now, and I'll turn it over to Vice Chair, Acting Chair Gossett this evening.
Good evening. I'm opening the Planning Commission meeting in Half Moon Bay on Tuesday, August 8th, 2023. I'm Margaret Gossett, Acting Chair for Chair Hernandez, who's not available tonight. At this point, we will stand to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, would you like to take roll call?
Sure.
Please.
Commissioner Gorn?
I'm here.
Commissioner Reddick?
Here.
And Acting Chair Gossett?
Here.
Those absent are Commissioner Johannes and Chair Hernandez and Commissioner Johannes are absent this evening.
At this point, I'd like to open up the public hearing for any items that are not on the agenda.
We have one, and it's Mark Massara. You're welcome to come up. Oh.
Oh, that helps. Okay. Good evening, honorable members of the Planning Commission. I'm Mark Massara, your humble advocate and Miramar resident. You'll recall a few weeks ago, we discussed a single-family home proposed for 2800 Champs-Élysées, a project within the Stolowski subdivision before you now for about the last 7 years. Tonight, we'd like to ask for your support in removing the story poles. You'll recall neighbors have raised numerous concerns over the years about them having been destroyed by storms, wind, having to have been repeatedly reconstructed across what will soon be at least 5 separate Planning Commission hearings. Our request is to be able to take them down at this time and not reconstruct them for future hearings. The basis of our request is that the house design and footprint is no longer the subject of contention, is not changing. There are no view impacts or visual issues associated with the house, and they are very expensive to maintain and a neighborhood irritation. So that their ongoing presence is both unfair to neighbors as well as the applicant. As you'll recall, the story poles have been extensively photographed in the past by staff and by ourselves, and are certified by a licensed surveyor for their accuracy. And there's that letter. Then last week, we captured their brilliance and memorialized their outline for posterity via drone photographs. And we believe that that now is sufficient. The remaining issues to be discussed as directed by you and for which we're in discussions with your staff are drainage and flooding issues, and they have nothing to do with the story poles, the house design, or the location of the house on the lot. Simply put, the story poles are no longer needed, and we'd like your support for their removal. We've spent many tens of thousands of dollars on them now over the years, and they aren't going to assist with respect to any future hearings. Next slide, please. Assuming you grant us this concession, I would like to remove them in the next couple of weeks and would urge anyone wanting one last look to go see them. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have no further general public comment.
Thank you. We will close the public hearing. And at this point, as we move into the next project discussion, the city file PD 20-036, I would like to ask our fellow commissioners if they have any ex parte communications they would like to disclose.
I don't.
I don't either. Thank you. And I believe Jill will be presenting this item. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Acting Chair Gossett. I'm Jill Ekus. I'm the Community Development Director, and I am covering for the project planner for this item. As Scott Phillips has prepared this report for you and the resolution and has been working with this applicant, but he is not available tonight, so I am providing some backup for him. The item before you is a application from the College of San Mateo for a coastside education center to be located at 650 Mill Street. The site is zoned commercial downtown, and community college uses are considered a conditional use in the downtown area, as are other educational uses. This site, as you can see here, is at the corner of Purissima and Mill Street, and you can see that Main Street is over here. The project consists of a new mixed-use building with 5 units on the second floor and 2 commercial spaces on the first floor. And this was permitted back in October 2020 as a coastal development permit with design review and a parking exception at that time. For background on this history. At the time, the tenants weren't known, and so the first floor space, and that's what our focus is going to be really here, is on the first floor space. It was just presented to the commission really as shell space, not knowing what the tenant improvements would involve in the event of office or retail or some other kind of tenant. No one had been signed on at that point. This graphic is showing the site plan out to the sidewalk, the parking that is over here on the property, south side. The site is also notable for including an existing historic single-family home that has been retained with the architecturally compatible development that, as you I'm sure have seen, is nearing completion. All right. So this application from the College of San Mateo to put a ground floor, kind of a satellite community college use in downtown Half Moon Bay requires 2 permits. One is a use permit, and the other is a furthering of the parking exception. I'm going to cover the use first in brief, and if you have questions, we can come back around to it. But in order to grant a use permit, which is the purview of the Planning Commission, The commission will need to make a finding that is presented here on the slide about circumstances of the particular case, that it won't be detrimental to the public welfare, injurious to property or improvements in said neighborhood. You'll note that this is presented in Exhibit A of the resolution attached to your staff report, and that staff has presented language in support of making that finding. Instead of digging into that, I did want to share with you the context of staff's recommendation as to why we believe that the use is consistent and compatible with the neighborhood and the commercial downtown zoning district. This is the mixed-use downtown, and the mixed-use downtown acknowledged in your land use plan under the town center policies calls out for a wide range of uses, including resident-serving uses, which is kind of unusual for what you have had proposed in the downtown area. Usually it is more oriented to visitors, and so from that perspective, we find that rather special. The peak hours are off-peak from the downtown's typical peak, which tends to be the weekends as well as some evenings, especially Friday night. And the resident serving aspect of it is also helpful from the perspective of reducing vehicle miles traveled and providing for kind of that complete neighborhood that your land use plan was supporting. There's also a policy in your land use plan, policy 2-8, about community needs, and it covers a wide range of needs, including community-oriented uses for coastside residents. With that, I'm going to move on to parking. So to get context for the parking, Scott thought it would help you to take a good look at the floor plan. We note that there are 2 tenant spaces, and College of San Mateo is proposing to occupy both. The space on the corner would include office spaces, which show 4 workstations. There may be room for another 1 or 2. And then a smaller room that could be used as a conference room or a small classroom, which is, in this format, is showing 8 seats, but it could be formatted differently. The other space is devoted to classroom space. It's a larger classroom, and as presented, it's showing you 22 seats. And when we add all of that up with the workstations and the places for students, we get to room for 36 folks, assuming that we have a couple instructors working in those classrooms. As you know from your staff report and application materials, CSM has requested approval for up to 45 individuals, which would include both students as well as faculty and staff. And so we did not do the parking analysis based strictly on this floor plan. Instead, we used their higher number of 45 so that you can see what the biggest impact might be. CSM submitted this graphic indicating that the proposed parking plan is to direct students through the registration process to park on Church Street, which through city's parking demand analysis studies prior to COVID, we know is underparked or has available parking during weekdays. And they're noting how proximate that public parking area is. Other parking provisions are available off-site as well as on-site for faculty and staff. We understand that there be on the order of 5 or so faculty and staff, and I'm sure that would vary from day to day. But when this was originally approved back in 2020, the parking exception included approval of an off-site location at 655 Miramonte Street, where a deed restriction has already been recorded that has secured 5 spaces on that property that are in excess of what that property is required to provide, and they are available for this property. At the time that the commission considered those off-site spaces, the thought was that they would be for the commercial tenants, and that seems to translate really well for the faculty and staff of CSM to have the routine of parking in that off-site location. We also note that there are 5 parking places on site. They are meant to be shared use with the 5 residential units. We can imagine that some of the residents may park all the time or have a car occupying that, and so we're not really fully counting on having all of those available to faculty and staff of College of San Mateo, but with the staffing that it appears that they're proposing, those off-site spaces are enough or close to enough. Back in 2020, the approved parking exception was for about just over 2 spaces. And the commission granted reductions in the parking provisions based on your zoning code allowances for waiving the guest parking requirement, and also for the mixed-use shared use parking reduction of up to 20%. This proposal would go beyond what had been previously requested, and with 10 parking places provided, and assuming that all the previous approved parking reductions are still in place, we're looking at an additional exception of 8 more places. And I'm happy to go through more of that. We will note that I apologize, I'm reviewing some notes from Scott and me. We do note that we wouldn't expect the student parking to be all-day parking, that we would expect it to be quite dynamic. The staff we would think would park and be there for most of the day, but that the student schedule and moving about would be much more fluid. We have heard some concerns about the parking provisions, as well as about the intersection condition at Mill and Purisima, and we just want to know that we're available to address those. In particular, we are aware that there's desire for the intersection to be a 4-way stop. Right now it's 2-way stop controlled. The city engineer has actually initiated the analysis that needs to be done in advance of installing the additional 2 stop signs. And clearly the crosswalk markings need to be improved, and that's going to be part of that. He's not here to give you the whole timeline, but we did discuss that with him today, John Dowdy and I, and it's in the queue. So we're happy to report out about that, noting the concerns that we've heard. Just for the good of the order, this project is categorically exempt under CEQA. We do not have any new development, and parking in and of itself is not considered to be an impact under CEQA. Scott fully noticed this project. The site was posted, notices were mailed, legal notice was run in the Half Moon Bay Review. Additional groups were notified. I know, I believe Karen Decker helped us get notice out to our downtown folks and the Chamber of Commerce. And comments have been received. One email was attached to your staff report, and then we received some comments fairly late this afternoon, and Bridget has, we emailed them to you, but Bridget has also provided a hard copy to you. And I have been checking Scott's email, by the way, to make sure there were no other comments. So, and I looked this afternoon, and there were no more. Staff is recommending approval. You will note, and we're concerned too, just about making sure that it fits well, and thus there are conditions of approval to monitor and have some checking in on this. And we encourage the commission to draw their attention to that. In addition to our recommendation, of course, it is always the commission's purview to add or modify conditions of approval or to continue an item and direct staff regarding next steps. This meeting format is going to follow your typical format, although we have one special speaker in advance of turning it back to the commission. I do want to turn this over to Karen Decker, the city's Economic and Community Vitality Manager, so she can take an opportunity to address this commission and acknowledge the Coastside Recovery Initiative relative to this proposal. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Jill. And good evening, Acting Chair Gossett and commissioners and community. I'm so pleased to be with you this evening. As Jill said, I'm the Economic and Community Vitality Manager within the City Manager's Office for Half Moon Bay, and I'm also the Project Manager for the Coastside Recovery Initiative. The initiative is an economic and development recovery plan, and it underwent a year-long process led by a task force of 17 coastsiders from Pescadero all the way up to the tunnels. So it wasn't constrained to the city limits. Throughout that year-long process, those 17 task members filtered into 4 different working teams, and we had over 20 convenings discussing the state of the coastside, opportunities, challenges, and I just wanted to share a few takeaways that I think are relevant to the discussion. One thing that the task force discussed a lot is about how the coastside is lacking in economic diversity. We are a beautiful region. We have incredible natural resources and assets. We're a region that largely sells itself. And at the same time, we are heavily reliant on tourism and restaurants and small businesses, the very industries that were impacted really hard by COVID. And that undermines our prospects for long-term economic growth, and it makes us vulnerable to external shocks, whether that be wildfire or pandemic or severe weather storms or a sinkhole on 92. We are largely a tale of two regions. While 30% of households earn over $200,000 a year, over half of households earn less than $150,000 a year. And $150,000 a year is the number that it takes a family of 4 to meet self-sufficiency standards in San Mateo County. More affluent residents commute over the hill, as we say, largely to have higher wage jobs and better benefits, while less affluent residents are stuck in low-wage jobs that tend to dominate the coastside economy. 1/3 of residents have not attended college, and nearly 10% have less than a high school education. When we have limited job opportunities and low wages, our region is less competitive, and it's harder to attract graduates of Half Moon Bay High School who otherwise may want to stay in the region but feel like they have to go to another area to have a high-impact, high-wage job. And I think you could extend that to folks who want to reskill as a result of the pandemic. While online classes are a really nice option, and they were essential during the pandemic, they're not for everybody. And as coastside residents know, our digital infrastructure is really lacking in terms of reliability. So out of all that, this report produced by that task force was released. It's a public document, And these challenges and concerns and opportunities were shared, particularly when Dr. Taylor Mendoza from the college called. She heard about the initiative and said, how can we help? What are the needs of the COSIDE? That triggered a series of town hall meetings and stakeholder group convenings. And out of that was a recommendation from the initiative, and I'm going to quote it: increase access to vocational training and higher education opportunities for economically vulnerable residents. College of San Mateo listened, and they responded through action. One of the first things that happened was the college developed a contract with Lyft and identified 6 strategic sites to help eliminate that barrier of transportation or begin to address it by taking co-siders up to the college. In further discussions, in realizing that while that's a good start, looking at it the other way, what if they could bring the college back to the COSIDE? And I say back because, as many of you will recall, CSM had a location in Shoreline Station about 12 years ago. So while it's not it's a new application, but it's almost more of a welcome home than a new campus. We believe that this helps to address a longstanding challenge, the gap between employer demand for an educated and skilled workforce and the supply of workers with the necessary skills for the next economy labor market. Another COSIDE Recovery Initiative recommendation calls for downtown revitalization and a redesign of Heritage Main Street to improve mobility and economic activity and vibrancy. We believe the college campus will generate weekday use of the downtown by locals who may not otherwise come downtown. And hopefully they will establish patterns for patronizing local businesses. The local campus also means that there's more incentive. It's accessible by public transit. Hopefully that results in fewer cars on 92, which is a different traffic concern of many co-siders. And we believe this project will have a positive impact over generations to come and just gets us closer to that future economy that works for everybody. So I really look forward to returning to the Planning Commission in September for a special joint session of the Planning Commission and the Architectural Advisory Committee, where we'll further discuss and have some great conversations about this concept of downtown revitalization, streetscapes, and we see a new campus of higher education to be a really integral part to that revitalization and to that prosperity that we want for all co-siders. Thank you so much for your time and your consideration of this application.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, I will open the public hearing and ask the applicant if they would like to speak. And normally we would give the applicant 10 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Acting Chair and Planning Commissioners. My name is Richard Storty, and I'm the Acting President of College of San Mateo. I would like to begin my presentation by thanking the Commission for considering the use permit, which would allow College of San Mateo to have educational space here in Half Moon Bay. CSM and the San Mateo Community College District are very excited about this opportunity. Community colleges provide educational opportunities that are truly transformational in the lives of students and also in the community served. CSM serves a diverse educational, economic, social, and cultural needs of students. We currently serve over 65% of students of color. College of San Mateo is also has the proud designation of a Hispanic serving institution. The college provides holistic student services in an extensive range of degree and certificate programs. Our accomplished and dedicated faculty and staff are committed to student success. Establishing community college classroom space in Half Moon Bay will improve access for residents of Half Moon Bay by helping to remove transportation barriers and improve access of offerings.
Our commitment to the Coastside facility will be a vehicle for post-secondary attainment and mobility. The college intends to make a significant investment in technology and furnishings that will create a state-of-the-art learning environment in the space. I'm happy to answer any questions, and once again, I want to thank the Commission for considering this outstanding opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else in the public wish to speak on this matter?
I see no one in person. I'm not sure if, yeah, there we go. Jane Lewis would like to speak, and she's online, so let me allow her to speak. There you go. You're unmuted, Jane. You can start.
Hello. Hello, neighbors, and thank you for serving on the Planning Commission. I know it takes a lot of time, and we need your help. Thank you. I'm here today as the president of the Coastal Arts League at 300 Main Street in Half Moon Bay. Our organization has been at that location since 1995, and I will read my notes so that I don't drift. The Planning Commission is considering a use permit that allows up to 45 CSM students and faculty to park in the neighborhood while attending classes in the new building at Purissima and Mill Streets. The first issue is insufficient parking. The Planning Commission approved a 20% reduction of parking when approving the project in 2020. That reduced the parking requirements from 17 to 10 spaces, including the 5 on-site spots shown in attachment 2, plus 5 spaces in a building 4 blocks away by the same owner. The reduction did not consider the possibility of a CSM extension program. In reality, there is no on-site parking available for the CSM extension. Those upstairs apartments will be difficult to rent without reserved parking. Who would want to come home to find their residential parking space occupied? There will be additional pressure for parking throughout the neighborhood. Staff has suggested that students will be able to park on Church Street, but students and staff of the college will easily find the Zabala Square parking lots just half a block from the new building. Every commercial tenant in Zabala Squares pays an additional fee for the use of the parking lot. Our businesses need those spaces for staff and customers, and towing unwanted cars will be a public relations nightmare. It's legal, but we don't want to do it. And then there are the traffic hazards. I'm so pleased to hear that this has been under consideration already, but there's something else. Without a stop sign to slow the traffic, drivers fly from Main Street to Church Street at 45 miles an hour. I cross Mill Street at Purissima at least twice a day. The diagonal parking on Mill Street prevents me from seeing oncoming traffic. The stop signs on Purissima are far back from the corner, so after I stop at the line, I creep out to almost the middle of Mill to see if cars are coming. This is the same situation on both sides of the intersection. A solution to this problem is to allow only parallel parking on Mill Street and install a 4-way stop to slow the traffic, and crosswalks would be necessary as well for pedestrians. So those are my issues, my 2 issues, insufficient parking and traffic hazards. Thank you for listening to my concerns.
Thank you for that.
I have no others.
Okay, at this point, we will close the public hearing and open up questions from our fellow commissioners. Who would like to start?
So I have a couple of things I didn't really understand. I just want to make sure that I'm clear. How many residents are in this are in the place right now? Can you help me with that? Just so I get the numbers right.
Sure. There are 5 residential units being completed on the second floor. One of them is fully ADA accessible, and all of them are visitable. And I can't remember the bedroom count for all of them. I know the ADA unit is 1 bedroom.
Okay. So not counting visitors, maybe 10? But we don't know for sure.
Oh, how many residents?
Yeah.
We don't know. We don't
Okay.
know what the households are going to
Okay.
consist of.
And the 45 number includes staff, right? That's not just the students, that's staff and students, right?
Yes, our understanding from College of San Mateo is that is the maximum occupancy they
Right.
propose with all individuals.
And so it's 4 staff basically in the, all the time, and then 1 instructor. I assume that's staggered. You have many instructors, but it'd only be 1 at a time. Is that accurate?
I think that generally sounds like the staff's understanding, but College of San Mateo can certainly provide more details about their operations.
Okay.
Would you like to hear from the
Yeah,
applicant?
sure, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So 45 is the maximum number of occupants of the building, and that would include both students and staff. We anticipate the average occupancy somewhere around 30, because we're not always going to be fully occupied. And our time of programs would be dependent through the day. So we'd have certain peak periods, which we really believe would be at off-peak periods when residents and other members would be parking on the street. Staff-wise, we're looking at 4 maximum, but likely it would be 1 to 2 in any given point in time. So 1 to 2, but the maximum capacity for staff is 4, but we anticipate the majority of the time it would be 1 to 2, and that includes the instructor's time.
So 4 staff people, but you also have a conference room? So
Correct.
I assume that's not just for the 4 people, it's people to visit and meet, and so it's a little bit more than 4 at a time. I mean, 4 every day, but.
Correct. And the rooms actually are structured where 1 classroom could hold up to 22. We could expand it more, but right now our plan is to have 22 in that classroom, and that's the large classroom. The other room is a smaller conference room type space that could occupy 10 students. But again, those are what we plan to roll out, but the maximum of the size of the space is the 45.
Okay, so the conference room would be for teaching as well, not just for staff meeting
Correct.
with people, but for teaching.
Right.
So you're talking about roughly, a maximum of 33 is what you're hoping for?
Yes, yes,
And then the 5 staff,
correct.
actually 36 staff, counting 2 instructors.
Right.
So about 40 people is kind of what 39, 40 people. Is what
As
you're
the
looking
max, right.
at. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair Gossett. I have 2 clarifying questions that, just for the record, does the college anticipate specific hours that the campus would be open? And secondly, am I right that the 5 on-site parking spaces are to be shared by residents and staff, faculty, but not available to students?
Answer your first question, Monday through Friday operations would conclude at 7 o'clock in the evening. Weekends, the facility would be closed for the college currently, according to the terms of the lease. Saturday operation would be limited to community-type events, so not specific classes. These are restrictions that have been built into the lease and as a way of containing noise. The college does really have a desire to offer classes on the weekends, but subject to parking and noise constraints. because we're really looking at the students that desire and taking classes. A lot of them are working adults, and they're only available either on the weekends or in the evenings. So that's something that we would like to explore and pursue more. But the initial plan is to conclude hours Monday through Friday at 7 o'clock, and weekend would only be Saturday operations for community-type events. And the parking, the 5 spaces, would not be dedicated spaces. It would be subject to availability. When they're open, people could park there. That's my understanding.
Thank you for that. Related to that, does the lease specify a beginning time at the start of the day?
It does. I believe 9 o'clock? 8 o'clock.
Thank you.
Through the chair, I just wanted to follow up on the second question about the on-site parking relative to students. The original approval of this project assumed that that parking lot would be for shared use. However, we did not anticipate the particular use. It's possible that students could park there, but we really were focused on having the students park over on Church Street because we were concerned about how many ins and outs of the driveway during daytime hours, and if somebody was driving in and it was already full, and this just isn't, because the lot is so small, it didn't seem like a practical solution. Maybe there's, teacher's assistants or some other way that the school could assign a couple students who may spend more time at the facility, and they can make that work with their landlord. But our focus was to not have the students rely on that small parking lot.
Do you have any more questions? Okay, I still have questions. I noticed in the October 2020 staff report that the project required street improvement, such as the curb, gutter, sidewalk, crosswalk, upgrade of the storm drain system along the southeastern corner of Parisma and Mill Street. Will this be completed before the use of the property?
Yeah, that needs to be done before the property can be finalized. The city engineering staff are preparing to oversee the street and right-of-way portion of the construction. We understand that the College of San Mateo intends to have a soft opening in the fall. That should be a good way to kind of break it in, as this building is brand new. And then for the spring semester, I guess, would be operating at full level. But I spoke with our engineering inspector today, and he is preparing to start working with the crews on the inspections that are required for the improvements that you are citing.
And I guess the other question I might have is more of a technical engineering question regarding the safety of that intersection. And I don't know if now is the time to talk about that, but I just wanted to know if it's possible to have crosswalks at all, on all the corners, in addition to adding the stop sign before the community college begins their classes, to keep it safe for the community.
I'm looking back at John Dowdy because I thought he had the engineering background, but I would say that the project itself was required to provide for that. The city has been doing other painting upgrades of crosswalks throughout downtown. I think that we really need to include this one in that round or the very next round of when we do that. I think we'll have to come back with you with the timing for the other crosswalks, but the crosswalks leading to this project site would need to be completed. By the way, there was kitty corner to this project. This commission approved a mixed-use project prior to the one that you're looking at now. And that first project was required to do the other crosswalks and improvements, but that project has, it's expired, and the owner did not bring it forward. So I did want to share that context. It isn't an oversight. It's just there were different things going on with the whole intersection. I'm confident that the stop sign can happen very quickly and that some of the crosswalks can as well.
Thank you, because I walked on Church Street today to look at the parking, and I noticed that they had very good delineated crosswalks at all. I think there were 3 really good crosswalks there. So it would be nice if we had that at this intersection. And then I guess another question, would the crosswalks in of themselves help calm traffic? Do we know, in terms of safety for the pedestrians?
They can help a lot if they're high visibility. There's a lot of cues to the driver and to pedestrians and cyclists when the streetscape design is presented in a way where sight lines are good. The crosswalk improves visibility because that's right in front of the driver's nose. It helps the pedestrian cross in the right place. The stop sign is a very good help. It's not necessarily going to be traffic calming, but it is traffic control, and it would require to have a stop line in advance of the crosswalk, which will help drivers kind of inch out appropriately, as we heard needs to be done now without those stop signs. It would just be safer. When stop signs are installed and they're new, they usually come with additional visibility, so people get kind of trained to and accustomed to them. So they usually have flags and all kinds of other markers on them. So that's another part of bringing that kind of improvement into a new intersection. I think the combination will be very helpful. Karen is, by the way, she's working with John Dowdy on a streetscape project for downtown. It's really focused on Main Street, but the topic of parking alignment is definitely going to get addressed, and we're thinking about it on Main Street and the side streets, so that's also of note.
Thank you. I have no more questions.
Well, I would say I was delighted when CSM was announced as a possible tenant there, and it would be a great addition to have everybody. Like, I don't think you have to sell anybody on that one, okay? So the parking is problematic. So, with 10 residents and 5 staff fighting over 5 spots, I don't think there's going to be any students even trying to go in there. Where they're going to try to go is where Jane Lewis said, which is Zabala Square. They're going to everyone's going to go there. That's what I would do. They're going to fill up that street and whatever. So personally, I don't think, like, parking being at a premium is not horrible. Like, that's a sign of downtown vitality. I think that having that area more vibrant will actually draw people. Everybody parks right on Main Street all the time because that's the only thing they see is, active. And so it might actually draw people to park on the side streets a little bit more. I think all that's great, but I think, asking for a variance for another parking variance, I would need to understand the need for a parking variance. Like, I understand that you want a parking variance, that makes sense, but I see, it's 45 people and the residents, and we've already granted a variance for the residents, and so, 45 people is 45 cars, and that's a lot of parking. And so I just, I know that's an upper limit, but, things change over time, and the limit is always pushed and pushed and pushed, and so maybe it's more. I don't know. So I would like to know, so there's a need for a parking variance, that one would have to be shown to me.
Well, I agree with Commissioner Gorn on the exciting aspects of College of San Mateo coming back to Half Moon Bay. My son William attended classes at the old Shoreline Station in between high school and college, and he and many of his peers were very upset when that didn't continue. I think that I'd like to thank staff, as usual, for the comprehensive and very helpful packet on this. And as Karen Decker and Director Ekus have spoken tonight, there are a lot of benefits in terms of visitor serving priorities such as vocational training and providing higher education that would be a real step forward for the city, not to mention the revitalization of businesses. I think for me, the decision on this does come down to whether it qualifies for the kind of parking exemption that's necessary to make this work. And in my mind, I think that it does meet the standards. As the staff report said explicitly, the zoning code requires findings including that exceptional circumstances apply to this building in order to grant a parking exemption like this. And indeed, I think there are special and exceptional circumstances. It's a kind of a once-a-decade opportunity to provide local classrooms, delivering valuable education opportunities to our residents. It's be something in our downtown that would serve local residents and not tourists, and would, of course, support the concept of more vitality around Main Street. I think also, importantly, it would reduce vehicle trips over the hill. It's also as close as you can get to the transit hub of Half Moon Bay. So I push back just a little bit, Commissioner Gorn, on the idea of one person, one car. I think we'll see a little bit better demographics than that. On a realistic basis, part of this problem with parking is that the historic building that is to be preserved on that site limited, back in 2020 when we were considering this, limited the amount of on-site parking that we could insist upon. The 5 off-site places at Goldworks are certainly a help there. But I think, the other thing is, where on the coast side could you have a facility like this if you were going to require no exemption for parking? I guess you could put it in one of the shopping centers, but that's about the only thing I can think of. So I'm glad to hear about the improvements to the intersection. I think that's important. Ms. Lewis is very right to bring that up. The flashing lights that now exist on this crosswalk where you exit this complex and go across Kelly, those to me are very helpful, and I think they do. I've witnessed that they do calm traffic a little bit when pedestrians press that button and you see those flashing lights. I think also that Church Street, on the days we're talking about, based on the parking surveys that Director Ickes had done some while ago, is certainly a realistic and close-by opportunity. And I think as people get off Main Street just a little bit, they'll be pleasantly surprised that there are other opportunities there that are not so far. The last few days, as I've been going through this, I'm wrestling with the concept of, well, should we somehow try to guarantee parking for the residents in that building? But you know, where I come down, I think it's let's not over-police that. Let the owner work that out in whatever conditions apply to those units. And if they're not reserved, then the owner has a responsibility to make that clear to people who are going to be living there. But I tried to restrain myself from trying to over specify that. But thank you. That's the gist of my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Ruddick. I'm also very pleased to see this application come forward. I think it's going to be really good for our downtown area and for the community to have a local community college on the coast side. I don't really have a problem with the parking. I walk the neighborhood frequently. I'm a big walker, and I did count the parking spots on Church. There were 39 delineated parking spots, and I know Jill has done a really good study on parking availability in the downtown area during peak demand, and the school won't be operating during peak weekend type tourist activities. We don't, well, maybe they will be, but and there's also in the neighborhood, there are underutilized parking spots, and hopefully with this study that you're working on, Erica, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I got the name wrong. Karen. Maybe there'll be opportunities to improve the parking situation based on on-demand type parking situations that can offer the residents parking when they need it. So I'm hoping that there'll be a good outcome with that kind of study to utilize parking that isn't utilized. Today I counted at least 40 vacant parking spots in the general neighborhood at noon. So yeah, parking for me isn't really a concern. I lived in an urban environment in Chicago where I rented an apartment that did not come with parking. If I wanted to pay for parking, I could park in a high-rise a block and a half away and spend a certain amount of money to guarantee a parking spot. So there were times I had to walk a block or two back to my apartment. So that's part of living in a downtown area that is vibrant. So I've had that experience and did okay with that in a harsh climate living in Chicago. So anyway, that's all I really wanted to say. Thank you.
Jill, if Scott were here, I would say, what other parking options did you explore? Are there any other ideas out there that might work particularly for the 5 staff that are going to be taking the residents' spots during the day?
I'd like to clarify that a little bit, if I could, because I think I might not have differentiated the 5 spots because we have 5 spots in 2 different places, and we were talking about 5 staff people. There are 5 parking places off-site dedicated to this development that College of San Mateo has agreed through these conditions of approval that we've drafted would direct their staff to use. They would not be directly competing with the residential parking spaces. They would be using those off-site spaces first and foremost as the priority spaces. So those 5 are not going to impact this corner of Mill and Parissima. We did look at some other locations. We considered, we frankly even looked at Shoreline Station, but it's kind of circuitous to get there. And in looking over our past parking studies, I have to say, we were just very pleased by how good of a fit for the off-peak time this use is relative to parking availability on Church Street. My concern is Saturday, and Scott communicated that with our applicant. We added some condition language about not overlapping with, some of the big events. Obviously, we don't think we should have additional community events on Pumpkin Festival times and things like that, but our concern really is Saturday. We have that area peaks. It gets full, including Church Street. And Church Street has a church, and they do have services and activities on the weekend. And so that part of the use is one where because of it, staff doesn't like to shut things down. This is for you to learn about and explore and work through the public forum, but we did put a monitoring condition in here because we were concerned about that. So if you look at the draft conditions of approval, condition D3 refers to monitoring compliance with conditions of approval. At a year, we want to see a report. We want to make sure students are absolutely not parking at Zabala Square, which I think will be pretty obvious if that were to occur, and that they are parking on Church Street. So those were some of our considerations. I appreciate the question. John Dowdy did just remind me that these community uses they're challenging. Even our library gets, what did you say, 1,000 visitors a week? And it's been accommodated. It's working. The parking lot is relatively small. It's full. The street side parking turns over really well. Of course, a lot of the users are kids walking from school, so that's a very special population. But we do, accommodate that. And so we saw there being some synergy for this kind of community-oriented use to locals that, again, is peaking on weekdays.
So can you tell me about Sunday? Because there's a lot of church services and visitor serving
Sure.
on Sunday.
Yeah, CSM is not proposing to be open at all on Sunday at this time. No community events, no classes. That was not included in their application. So we think that was wise.
So when they say nights and weekends, what they really mean is nights,
On Saturday.
right?
I think evenings up to 7 p.m., as our acting president reported to you. We extended the hours of operation in the conditions beyond that, but this commission is invited and welcome to match the hours of operation to the applicant's proposed needs. We just thought they might need a little more flexibility from time to time. I put it at 10 o'clock p.m. because that matches the city's noise ordinance. They're requesting to operate to 7 p.m. on weeknights, perhaps a 8 p.m. Stop time would work for them, giving them an hour to, close up. And I see heads nodding, so that maybe they should come back to the podium and just clarify things if you'd like through the chair.
Sorry, but night doesn't seem to be a problem for me. I mean, like, there's nothing going on at night there. So-
Friday night is impacted.
Okay, all right.
The other nights are fine. Friday night, the parking does fill up. You've got some lodging there, the San Benito House and the, it escapes me, the Rose Mill Inn.
Millrose Inn.
And then, of course, just some liveliness with Friday nights. So we would want to probably avoid that.
Thank you.
Thank you, if I may. So, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of our students are working adults where evening classes are the only times they can take a class. And oftentimes, these are the students that really need us the most, providing those transformational opportunities. The owner has put restrictions that constrain our use at 7 o'clock, but we really intend to be there for our students and perhaps have classes that are quieter in nature, but we also, we have a history of being good neighbors at our College of San Mateo location, Kenyatta College, Skyline College. We want to be good neighbors, respectful of our neighbors, and work with them. We don't want to create noise problems for our neighbors, the residents. So if we do have a class later in the evening, and if we are able to control the noise, we would do so as included in the application. The same goes for the weekend classes. The owner has put constraints on our hours of operation where currently we're not allowed to operate on Sunday, and Saturday's operations are only for community events. But we want to have flexibility with that, still being good neighbors, noise and parking, taking those into account, and still offer classes to our students. But right now, included in our plan is only community events on Saturdays, and we'll respect the events that were mentioned earlier, so, to control the parking and help with the parking situation. I hope that helps clarify.
Thank you.
So, can I ask? So in the conditions of approval, we have the Saturday limited. Sunday, they say they're not going to be operating. That's not in the conditions of approval. And then maybe you want to do Friday night to a certain time, and they would be free to have a little bit longer class time on the Monday through Thursday. Does that make sense?
Is this a question for staff? Okay. So I think it would be helpful for everyone to look at draft condition A4, hours of operation, if you have that nearby. This is where the hours are presented as 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Friday. So per your comment now, we could imagine changing that to maybe 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and maybe ending at 7 p.m. on Friday, which was aligned with the application. Maybe there's other hours that you're considering. And then Saturday hours were presented by the applicant as being from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. for Saturday community events, and we added the not to be held with these overlapping activities. And there are no Sunday hours specified, so we could be more overt about that and just say there are no Sunday use hours, but we just didn't cover them.
Through the chair?
Yes.
Just a little confused about, our applicant has mentioned agreements about these things that they have with the owner. The details that we enact in the use permit, will they supersede whatever the owner has agreed to, or how will that work?
Usually, the way that works is the city's permit holds in terms of what the city will enforce, but the applicant is going to need to satisfy both the terms of the permit and the terms of their lease, so whatever is more restrictive is how they'll have to operate.
And can I ask
Thank you.
Jill, in terms of what you just proposed, is that what the community college asked for in terms of, do they align?
Well, what they asked for, I believe, was, and I'll have to go back in, but I think it was 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. And Scott and I moved it up an hour earlier because we assumed that there may be some folks who need to come in and, you know, clean the space or whatever, and we didn't want that to be a violation of the permit. We also extended past the 7 p.m. as a suggestion for your consideration tonight up to 10 because of the city's noise ordinance, and we thought it might be compatible, although it may be too much, especially on Friday. We just wanted you to have options and to have this discussion with your applicant.
Thank you.
I just wanted to thank Vice Chair Gossett for her just-in-time parking survey today. That's good to hear that you did that. It reminds me of an incident not too long ago where I had a friend from over the hill, and we drove downtown to get coffee on Main Street, and I apologized to him because we had to go to the next block to park, and he laughed at me and he said, "Come to Sunnyvale, if you can get within half a mile of the place, you're lucky." So we're awfully spoiled, Half Moon Bay residents. But anyway, I thank you for the input about what you observed.
You're welcome. And I do want to just sort of, I know we appreciated Jane Lewis's comments, but I do want to make sure that, I'm so glad to hear, Jill, that we have a monitoring program, because we don't want Zabala Square to fill up, or even Purisma behind the Zabala Square to fill up with student parking, because that would detrimentally impact their activities. And I know that we, you know, count on the community college to be good neighbors, but it's how are we going to enforce that to protect that business there? That's the only other question or comment I might have.
Okay, and it sounds like you're interested in nearer term and possibly more frequent checking in, which I am going to assume that the college would agree to do and support, especially in the first year while things are settling out. We put a 1 year on it. It sounds like you might want, I don't know if the school is it quarterly or semesters? Semesters. I would recommend at least once a semester. That way you're having communication from the school to all the students for each semester, and so they're reinitiated into what the expectations are, and that can help. Staff isn't going to go out there and watch this. We don't. That's not what we do, and we do not have the capacity for that. We would expect to hear people call if they see any students walking from the areas that you're talking about. We don't want to have to enforce based on complaints, though. We would really like to see a proactive management by CSM, and we are under the impression that they would do that from the nature of their application.
Thank you.
Through the chair. The only other thing that I would sort of raise for discussion is this, if there are 5 spaces over at Goldworks that are for staff, then maybe you want to specify that those 5 spaces that are on site are not for staff. I mean, again, I agree with Commissioner Ruddick. You don't want to get into, we don't need to micromanage here, but it does seem like if they have those 5 spots, a good way to encourage them to use them is to say you can't park on the existing 5, the in-house 5. Does that make sense?
So I'm just, for the moment, going to assume that the applicant would agree to that. That would require an amendment to draft condition A7. There are 2 bullet points there. The first one is about where the students would park, which is directing them to Church Street. The second bullet point would need to be revised, probably completely replaced, and would capture the language about faculty and staff parking at on the Goldworks site.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that I want to do that. I was raising it as a discussion point.
Okay.
May I?
Please.
Philosophically, I am always on guard with myself about government overreach on these things, and I would like to believe, maybe I'm naive, but I'd like to believe that is an issue that wouldn't require overregulation like that. Could be addressed later, maybe, if it had to be, but I'm, I see the logic of it, so I perhaps could be persuaded one way or the other. Would it be useful to ask our applicant what their view of the best use of the 10 spaces would be from the college's perspective? Would the chair entertain that?
Of course.
Thank you.
Please, thank you.
Thank you. Getting my steps in back and forth to the podium, so I appreciate that. Currently, the 5 spaces at the site are not specified for the college, so it's our understanding that they would not be able, our staff would not be able to park there. So that's our assumption currently. So parking for the staff and the students. Well, students would be on Church Street, and staff could park on Church Street if that was an option, or the off-site parking spaces would be an option. And if I may touch upon the hours of operation, what's included in the application, the 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock is what our preference would be. And that would really be for custodial type services, as Jill mentioned earlier, either before or after the class. Our hours of operation, as Jill mentioned, would be the most restrictive. So if the county or if the city has certain requirements, 10 o'clock, and the owner has a more strict hours, we would follow the more strict option. And currently the owner's restriction is 7 o'clock as a way of controlling noise. But if we can operate in a way that allows us to move up to that 10 o'clock hour, maybe 9 o'clock, we would want to have that option. And if the city allows us to do so, and if the owner allows us to do so, and if the residents are okay with that from a noise standpoint, that's our preference. Thank you.
May I have a follow-up to that? I hear you about the hours. I've been involved, or I know people who have been teaching English as a second language here in Half Moon Bay for a long time, and I want to say the majority of their students come after work and after dinner, not in the middle of the day. So I know for a lot of folks that's the only workable method. I guess the owner of the building is going to be concerned about noise from things like custodial services up to as late as 10 p.m. impacting his residents upstairs, but.
Yeah, and I would imagine so also, and that's why we're limiting it initially, but if we can show that we're quiet in those operations, either the ESL classes or the custodial, and again, we want to be good neighbors, and we'll do whatever we can to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a planning commission issue.
Thank you. Any other thoughts, Commissioner Gorn or Ruddick?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Would anyone like to entertain a motion?
Well, I kind of, to be honest, I lost track of what we were thinking
Okay.
about with
Okay.
the hours of operation.
Oh, okay. Do you want to continue with that? So
Well,
maybe Jill could give us a summary, or Bridget, I don't know if you kept track.
I think the only question was Friday night. That's the only question. And whether it's a planning commission decision to limit that because of all the parking issues on Friday night. I think that's about the only thing. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what's on there.
I'm
Oh.
happy to summarize. I heard two areas of potential, or actually three areas of potential modification of the draft document that you have. One was about hours of operation, and we'll start there. Staff has proposed an earlier start and a later end time than what the district has a lease for at this point. And maybe it's too late on Fridays, maybe it's too late every day. We just heard the applicant say that 9 p.m. would work for them. But I would suggest that you consider pulling back Friday maybe to like a dinner hour or something, because that's when we start to really have a parking impact. But Monday through Thursday, staff's not concerned about parking demand, nor are we concerned about the associated noise. This is a mixed-use neighborhood, and a 10 p.m. close is aligned with our noise ordinance and our expectations for how a mixed-use neighborhood lives and sounds.
So through the chair, are you talking about a 6 p.m. Friday? Is that what you're talking about?
That was one idea.
And two other issues?
Two other issues. It sounds like we need to amend the second bullet point under parking, A7. The van accessible parking space, we do acknowledge it. It does need to be available to anyone who's using the property who needs it. So it doesn't matter if it's a resident or CSM. That's off limits to, that's not Planning Commission purview, that's not staff purview. That is ADA Act. So we'll clarify, we would offer to make that a separate bullet point so it stands alone, and then revise this that staff would park at the off-site location, and if there wasn't enough room there, that they would also, they could also park on Church Street. Does that sound right?
That works for me.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And Bridget, I hope when I talk, I can't type.
I'm
Okay. Okay. And then the third one was about monitoring, and we would encourage, maybe after all this, that condition D3, instead of 1 year, that it would align with the semester schedule, so that we know that at the beginning of the semester, all the registered students have been informed, and maybe halfway through the semester, we do a check-in and make sure it's working. And the district would just send us an update. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'd be, if my peers are ready, I'd be inclined to offer a motion with the amendments that Director Ekus read. I'm disposed towards 7 p.m. rather than 6 p.m. on Friday, but I'm open-minded on that.
If it's 6 p.m., I'll second.
Okay, well, with your indulgence, I'll make a motion then.
Please.
I move we approve the resolution at hand, including the use permit and the parking exemption with the following amendments the Friday hours of operation to end at 6 p.m., the parking specifications to call out the special nature of the ADA space that is on site, specify that faculty and staff are to park at the off-site lot, which I believe is 655 Miramontes, is that right? And lastly, that we embrace a monitoring program of once per semester for the first year of operation.
Would second.
Okay. Commissioner Gordon,
Yes, please.
Commissioner Reddick,
Yes.
and Acting Chair Gossett.
Yes.
Motion approved.
So there is a 10-day appeal period of a planning commission decision. This is not a coastal development permit. This is a use permit and parking exception. So the appeal rules are actually a little bit different. I believe the appeal period is 10 calendar days and not working days. So we just want to make a note of that because it's faster. And we appreciate the application. I know Scott Phillips is looking forward to an update from me, and he really enjoyed working with this applicant. And we appreciate Karen Decker coming tonight to share the context from the Coastside Recovery Initiative. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks to CSM as well.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming tonight. Okay. At this point, I think we would maybe go to the director's report. Once you're ready.
Thank you. Director's report will be very brief tonight. Your agenda forecast, we have meetings scheduled for you. I believe we're going to have full agendas through the fall. Your next meeting is August 22nd. Doug Garrison has been preparing an item for, it's about repairing the bridge over Pillarcitos Creek at Highway 1. It's a Caltrans project, and it's quite complex, and it has environmental matters, and we're going to try to get him to send you some of the documentation early that Caltrans prepared. They did their own, they're the lead agency, so they prepared their own CEQA documents. We are a responsible agency in this case, so it's just one of those kind of differently structured projects. And then the meeting in September, Karen, help me remember that date.
12th.
The 12th, okay. We're so excited, and I know you received an email from Bridget. We're planning to have a joint study session of this Planning Commission with the Architectural Advisory Committee to participate in the discovery phase for the streetscape master planning project. The consultants will be in town. They will be conducting a two-part charrette process, and the first part is to learn more, and they want to come and learn from you, and also we encourage the public to come and share their perspectives. It should be a really good room full of folks, and I'm really very happy about this consultant, so we're excited for you to meet them and work with them. And then your next September meeting, I know we've got things queued up, and October as well, so be aware of your the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month, and hopefully plan to be with us. And if you can't, let Bridget know as soon as you can. City Council next week, I will note that we do have one item. There was a civil grand jury report about accessory dwelling units, and we have prepared a response to that. So if you're interested in what's going on in that dialogue, I would encourage you to take a look at that staff report when it comes out and our response letter. it's on the consent calendar. I don't expect it to be discussed, so you'll have to go dig it up, and if I remember to send it to you, I will. Architectural Advisory Committee is canceled for August. They'll be meeting again in September, and obviously with you as well. And our next Community Development Director hearings, thank you, August 23rd. It's mostly the same old kinds of things that we see, mostly ADUs and additions and the like. And that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jill. And do we have any planning commissioner communications? Okay, please.
Director Ekus, I wonder if I might, if this is appropriate, request a future agenda item for staff to report to the Planning Commission on the results of the project a couple of years ago that we approved where the county was doing soil testing, drilling south of Poplar Beach parking lot as a first step towards informing them about what actions might be taken out there. I think I mentioned as a private citizen at the City Council priority meeting some months ago that there has been significant erosion in the south bank of that Seymour watercourse, and it frightens me about the toxic content of that land dump out there. And I think the county, it's not illogical to expect the county to let us know what the results of the drill tests were that we approved.
Is it on? It is. I think you may or may not be aware that the City Council authorized the mayor to send a letter to the board president from the Board of Supervisors regarding this matter in general terms. That has been sent. We continue to monitor, and we are also in the process of formulating a project for consideration for a grant program that's been made available. So we are going to be meeting with the county and with a number of parties, one Shoreline and other parties, hopefully RCD, to look at forming a group and proceeding with a broader perspective on the landfill clean closure, as well as stabilization of Seymour Ditch, and looking at the broader drainage basin as well, and looking at the water quality issues that seem to plague the upper watershed and work their way down. So that's the plan. We're happy. We can certainly ask Moz and put that together and give you an update, whether that's as a report or whether it's just an update in a memo to you guys. As the Planning Commission, you can figure that out and work with Jill. But we're happy to do that. And we did finally get a copy of the report that was done. And I think we can share some of that and kind of go from there. But I think the broader perspective on this is to say, we have heard you, the council heard you and others, and we remain concerned as well about the stability out there and also the potential for significant damage to the environment without intervention at some point in the very near future.
Well, thank you, John. It's good to hear that those things are in the works. Speaking for myself, I'd very much appreciate it if you share with us whatever you have from the county that you can share in terms of the results of their testing.
We will share what we can share with you. What we don't have and can't have, we'll authorize you to PRA it, but just kidding. We'll get you that information, and I think we'll be able to come back and talk about this as a broader project as well at a meeting to be determined.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for that. At this point, we could adjourn our meeting. Thank you.
So
Thank
moved.
you.
Did we decide we don't need a motion for that now?
Oh, do we
We
need a
can get a
motion?
motion in second. We don't need to do a roll call vote.
So move.
Seconded.
Okay.
Okay,
All
thank you.
all those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Have a good-
Good night, Winter.